Okay, part 3, how to get started with Scorekeeper. So the first thing you're going to do is install the package. So you'll need to install Scorekeeper from the GitHub repository. So the first thing you'll need to do is install the remotes package by using install packages and then remotes. If you do not have the remotes package installed, which you might, and then you'll call library remotes and install _GitHub the Embark Labs /Scorekeeper in order to install the package. These are links to the Scorekeeper GitHub repository and the Scorekeeper vignette, which is also hosted in conjunction with the repository. And these are great places to go to get started with poking around and learning about Scorekeeper. So I'm now going to give a quick example of what you might be able to do with Scorekeeper. So this is an example of some raw data that you might get, and this is kind of looks like a lot of the raw data that I might get when I am starting a project. So for instance, the variable names, I noticed that they're like CCQ370, CCQ380. I don't exactly know what that means. It's not really explaining much to me. I also see some -10s and some -1s in the data set, suggesting that there's something that I might want to look into to see if that's scored correctly, or I might need to change those numbers into something else. So one example is this is CCQ 360, which is the frequency that someone went on an eating binge during the past year. And you can see, looking at those values, that there are 2 people who had no response, and that is coded -1. And then a 1 is never, which is kind of a funky coding, and then less than once a month 2, and so on and so forth. So I know I'm going to want to get rid of those -1s, turn those into NAs, and then probably recode that everything down 1 from there. So never equals 0, once a month equals 1, that kind of thing. And here's another example from this same set. So this says respondent felt out of control when on a binge. And you can see here we have those -10s. And this is not completed. So that's different than a no response. And if I look a little bit closer, I might actually see that that is a variable that if you said no, that you had never been had an eating binge, that it wouldn't ask you that next question about whether you were out of control. And so I actually want to, kind of recode those -10s. I know that it just kind of skipped that question because we already know these people have, not had a binge. I'm going to want to change that to be a no, which right now is 3, and I'm going to want to change that no equals 3. I'm probably going to change that to no equals 0. So these are some kind of things that I can do, that I'm looking to do with Scorekeeper. I'm first going to clean. I'm going to select only the variables that I'm interested in scoring. I'm going to appropriately account for those skip patterns and recode all those negative numbers as missing, recode other responses to be more sensible, and then rename our variables with more descriptive names, and then clean up those variable labels. And then finally, I'm going to aggregate. So I'm going to create a sum score with the number of binge eating symptoms, for instance. I'm going to create a variable that represents absent, mild, or severe binge eating based on the number of those symptoms, and compute a variable indicating the absence versus presence of diagnostic level binge eating, which is maybe a little more algorithmic. So those are some things that I'm going to want to do to clean the data. Okay. So this is what it's going to look like at the end once I get the data clean. So we can use this score sheet to fully score our binge eating measure in just one line of code. So I'm going to say my clean data equals scorekeep. I'm going to put in my raw data, binge raw, which I showed you a couple slides ago, and then binge score sheet, which the score sheet has been derived from that. And if you want to see that whole score sheet, you can look on the vignette. And the last tibble in the set of 7 tibbles that it gives me is going to be the fully clean data. And you can see here with just that one line of code and the score sheet, of course, I was able to, now I have a much, much more sensible looking data set. I have labels that are variable names that look appropriate, that I can kind of see what these variables might be, what might be referring to. I can see that I have some zeros and some ones. I don't see any funky variables, that kind of thing. And I fully cleaned the data.